The government has acquired a new domestic debt of 71.4 billion through the April 2025 bond auction, in which it targeted 70 billion out of the auction, and that means that the government received an extra 2.47% of what it had targeted out of the auction. That is also to mean that this bond auction was oversubscribed by a marginal value of 2.47%. And we shall be looking at the finer details of the results, because today being the 2nd April of 2025, which marked the auction date, the results of the April 2025 bond auction are out, in which 3 FXD1 bonds were issued for bidding. That was FXD1 2020-15, FXD1 2022-15, and FXD1 2022-25. We shall be looking at the full details of the results after 3 seconds short break, so don't go away. In the meantime, as always, give us a like to this video, engage in the comment section, and we shall be looking at an example of how those figures will look like for an investor with a face value of 1 million shillings. See you after 3 seconds short break. Welcome back, and thank you for your like and comment. From this schedule, which we have extracted the data from the official results of the auction, we have divided into 4 columns. We have a details column. We have the first column for the first bond, that is FXD1 2020-15. The second column is FXD1 2022-15, and FXD1 2022-25 is in the last column. The first item is the due dates. The due dates for the first bond is 5th 2nd of 2035. The second bond's redemption date is on 6th April of 2037, and the third bond will be redeemed in full on 23rd of September 2049. These 3 bonds are paying their coupons in February and August for the FXD1 2020-15, and April and October for the 2 bonds in 2022, that is FXD1 2022-15 and FXD1 2022-25. The government was targeting to receive a domestic debt of a total of 70 billion, out of which they received an actual amount of 71.4 billion, marking an oversubscription in the April bond auction of 2.47%, and therefore the 71.4 billion that was received marked 102.47%. The total received bids stood at 71.7 billion, with 20.9 billion being received from the FXD1 2020-15 and 18.2 billion received from the FXD1 2022-15, and a whopping 32.7 billion from the FXD1 2022-25. That means that the longer bond of 25 years, FXD1 2022-25, was preferred by most of the bidders, with the medium-term bond FXD1 2022-15 being least preferred, receiving the lowest bids amounting to 18.2 billion. Out of those bids, the total bids accepted were 71.4 billion, out of which 20.9 billion came from the FXD1 2020-15, which was the shortest bond in terms of remaining maturity period, and that was almost an acceptance of all the bids that came through that bond. Then we had the 17.9 billion bids accepted for the FXD1 2022-15, which had total received bids of 18.2, meaning that substantially quite a number of bids were rejected, and 32.5 billion worth of bids were accepted for the long-term bond, or the longest maturing bond, that is FXD1 2022-25. The bid to cover ratio for the 3 bonds was 1, because we had a slight marginal oversubscription for the bonds. And yields, which are supposed to determine the price, the clean price, and the dirty price considering the accrued interest, the weighted market average yield for all the bids received for the three bonds were 13.6705% for the FXD1 2020-15. The weighted market average yield for bids received for FXD1 2022-15 were 13.8371%. Then the market weighted average yield for the bids that were received for the long maturing bond FXD1 2022-25 was 14.2372. This weighted market average yield is determined using the competitive bids for each particular bond. So it means the weighted average of the yield that the competitive bidders were demanding in order for them to invest were as those figures for the three respective bonds. Remember, the competitive bidders are the ones that are used to determine the accepted market yield for the bids that are accepted, and that is the yield that applies to the non-competitive bidders. To mean that part of the competitive bidders will be getting a yield which is higher than the yield that is considered for the non-competitive bidders. Because in determination for what to be rejected for the competitive bidders, CBK determines the weighted average for the total received bids. A percentage is rejected to manage the cost of that capital, and it is the competitive bids that are used to determine the weighted average of the accepted bids. Once those averages are done, the competitive bidders slightly above that average will be accepted depending on the subscription and the cost of the capital as projected by the CBK. So some of the competitive bidders way above the weighted average cost of the weighted average yield of accepted bids are rejected. So meaning that we will have competitive bidders getting a yield, a weighted average yield higher than what the non-competitive bidders will get. Then we compare the weighted average of the accepted bids, which is the yield that was demanded by the investors through the bidding process and has been accepted by the CBK. That is what we compare with the coupon rates, or because the coupon rate is a yield, the actual yield of the bond, to determine whether the bond will attract a discount or a premium. And this is with respect also to the market interest rates, which are considered by the bidders when placing their bids. And therefore, the coupon rate for the FXD1 2020-15 stood as or was 12.756%. If you compare that one with the weighted average yield that was given by the CBK of 13.6652, the accepted yield out of the auction is higher than the coupon. And because this investor has to be paid the coupon that is in the market, because this is a reopened bond, and the new investors will be treated the same way as the existing investors in the bond, their compensation comes in when you are paying for the bond. And therefore, the higher, because this accepted yield is higher than the coupon, they will get compensated for that extra yield out of the auction by getting a discount on the price that they will pay for the bond. And for that reason, when you look at the clean price came out at 95.1112, to mean that that compensation was awarded a discount of 4.8888. So the discount is arrived at by getting the par value of 100 shillings minus the clean price of 95.1112. That discount is what compensates you as an investor in the case where the accepted weighted average yield out of the auction is higher than the coupon which you must get paid in the existing bond. In the FXD1 2022-15, the accepted weighted average yield for the accepted bids stood at 13.8275 as per the schedule, and this bond has a coupon of 13.942%, meaning that the coupon for this bond is slightly higher than the weighted average yield accepted out of the auction. And therefore, because the bond has a higher coupon compared to the yield accepted out of the auction, then instead of the government compensating for a reduction, it is we, the investors, who will compensate the government for the extra return we are getting from the coupon, which is higher than the accepted yield out of the auction, and that is how we arrive at a premium. And because it's just a marginal difference, then we are getting a premium of 0.6457 per 100. The other bond, that is FXD1 2022-25, attracted a weighted average yield of accepted bids which stood at 14.2342, and the bond has a coupon of 14.1880. And for comparing those two, the average yield that is accepted out of the auction is higher than the coupon, and therefore the government will compensate the investor by giving a discount. And the discount is measured depending on the difference or the difference of the two yields. And that's why we're getting a marginal discount of 0.32740 per 100. So conclusively, that is to say that two bonds attracted a discount with the FXD1 2020-15, which had the lowest coupon, meaning that majority of the investors ran away from that bond, and therefore it attracted a higher discount out of the auction, because the few who invested in this bond asked for a higher return or a higher yield compared to the actual coupon of the bond. Then we had one bond, that is FXD1 2022-15, which attracted a slight premium because of the same difference. The clean prices came out 95.1112 for FXD1 2020-15, 100.6457 for the FXD1 2022-15, and 99.6726 for the FXD1 2022-25, majorly because of its prolonged maturity period. We have accrued interest for these particular bonds, and accrued interest relates to the period that is remaining to the next coupon payment date. The first bond, which is supposed to pay in August, because it is paying in February and August, has accrued interest of 1.7172, because there is a long period of time between today and August, actually about 4 months. The other two bonds, which are paying their coupons in April, which is the month of the auction, have 2 weeks to the coupon payment date, and therefore they have attracted a higher value of accrued interest, which is 6.4348 per 100 for FXD1 2022-15, because of a slower rate, coupon rate at 13.942 compared to 6.54830 for the FXD1 2022-25, because of a slightly higher coupon rate of 14.188. After another 3 seconds short break, we will now be looking at an example of an investor with a face value of £1,000,000 and how the numbers will look like. See you after 3 seconds, short break. In personal finance, we say wealth is silent and money is noisy. My biological assets in the background are making a lot of noise. So I don't know whether they will form part of my wealth or it's just about money. Looking at this schedule of example of an investor putting in a face value of £1,000,000 in each of the 3 bonds, this is how the numbers will look like. The actual price, which is the clean price, and the accrued interest for the 3 bonds, which we typically call the dirty price, for the FXD1 2020-15 is at 96.8284. And therefore it means if you subject that price to £1,000,000, and because the price is per 100, £1,000,000 will give us 10,000 hundreds. So you take that actual price, the dirty price, and you multiply by 10,000, and you are going to get 968,284 to be the actual amount that this investor will RTGS for payment or investment in this bond FXD1 2020-15. A proper breakdown of that total price will give us a clean amount of 951,112 shillings to be the clean price of 95,1112 per 100 multiplied by 10,000. Then we have a discount amount where the discount will be that clean amount deducted from £1,000,000, which is the face value. This face value is the amount that will be credited in the portfolio valuation account for this investor, but the actual amount will be lower by a discount of 48,888 shillings. So an investor of 1,000,000 shillings in the FXD1 2020-15 will enjoy a discount of close to 50,000, that is 48,888 shillings, because out of this auction, the investors or the competitive bidders for these particular bonds ask for a higher return to the actual return, which is a coupon for this bond, and they have been compensated by that discount. Then we have the accrued interest of 1.7172 per 100. So if you multiply that price or the accrued interest rate by 10,000, which is the number of hundreds in a million, you are getting a total of 17,172 to be the total accrued interest that we shall pay together with the clean amount of 951,112 for this investment of 1,000,000 in the FXD1 2020-15. So that now gives us how the total of 968,234 has been arrived at by adding the 951,112, the clean total, by investing a face value of £1,000,000, and then we add the accrued interest to get the 968,284. And that is exactly what will happen with the other 2 bonds. The FXD1 2022-15, investing £1,000,000 at an actual price, which is the dirty price combining the clean price of 100.6457 and the accrued interest of 6.4348 per 100 to get that 107.0805 will give us a total amount to pay of 1,070,805 shillings. That breakdown will amount to a clean amount of 1,006,457 shillings. To mean that if you take that clean amount paid and compare it with the face value bidded of 1,000,000, this investor will pay a premium of 6,457 shillings. In a breakdown, to consider the accrued interest for this particular investor, the accrued interest was 6.4348 per 100, and we have determined that a million has 10,000 100. Therefore, we multiply 10,000 by 6.4348, and we are getting accrued interest of 64,348. And that is a breakdown of how that price is arrived at. Then the last bond, that is FXD1 2022-25, bidding a value of 1 million and the bond getting accepted at a dirty price of 106.2209, you'll be required to pay 1,062,209 shillings. That will constitute or will be composed of a total clean amount of 996,726 shillings, because you will have gotten a discount of 3,274, being the face value that you bidded for, and minus the actual clean total of 996,726. But because of the accrued interest of 6.5483 for every 100, then that price change, because you'll have a total of 65,483 as the total accrued interest to pay on this bond. Meaning that with those two compositions, that the 65,483 for the accrued interest and the total discounted clean amount of 996,726, then you get the total amount to pay of 1,062,209 shillings for that investment. And that is how those prices are broken down for that particular example, and you can use it to determine a base value bidded for and accepted of any other value. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.